Jeff, can you, or sorry, Brett, can you do the YouTube live stream? If you can figure that out here. Oh, I got it right here. Never mind. Get that going and we can get started. Just 1 minute. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kelly Watt. I'm the CEO of Visual Plan. We prepared a presentation and discussion, and we have some fantastic speakers this afternoon. I'm going to do a really brief introduction to who's going to be speaking, and then as we do this presentation, we're going to have them do a more kind of in-depth introduction of who they are, what they do, and who they work for. And the companies represented AECOM, Precision Aerial, Newcastle Consulting, and Marcon Solutions. So, getting started, I will be moderating. We're going to start with Sam Doherty from AECOM, and then we will be presenting topics on design and discussions on Lidar and photogrammetry. We'll talk to Jennifer from a project management and project oversight and security perspective. Scott McGowan, who does a lot of drone inspections in the oil and gas space, has got some really cool things to share with us today. And then Kelly Stewart, from an overall risk and security perspective, is going to add his insight. So, just really quickly about myself, I am the CEO of Visual Plan. We are a software company that produces digital twins, and those digital twins are used in many different aspects of the build, operate, manage and design of facilities, and we host many different types of data, whether it be photogrammetry, LiDAR, BIM, 2D CAD, etc. We're really more of a collaboration engine for which wide groups of people that are working on projects, design and maintenance and operations can use visualization. And I think the topic here today is how we're looking at design through a little bit of a different lens with COVID, what kind of pressures that we have that are changing the way we fundamentally do business today. And kind of opening that conversation, I'll kind of just show you just a real simple visual. What do we mean by a digital twin? What do we mean by 360 imagery and BIM? Just to give you your mind a little bit of a window into what we're thinking about when we're doing virtual walkthroughs or site visits, and how we're going to use this data in different ways. And a digital twin really, in the definition, can mean many different things. It can be something physical. It can be a process. It can mean a lot of different things, but it really is a replica or something that we can simulate and change from, and something we can grow and monitor change from. So that's part of the conversation today. And kind of segueing here, Sam Doherty, I'd like to kind of give you a moment to introduce yourself, and thank you very much for coming on and spending some time today and sharing some of your insights and your knowledge. And I don't know if I know anyone that has quite the experience in reality capture as we see it as you do. So you got the mic.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and I really appreciate the invite, and thank you to everybody who's logged in and taken time out of their busy days today to listen in. It's greatly appreciated. My name is Sam Doherty, and I'm a vice president at AECOM. I lead a group called Digital Practice and Technologies. We basically specialize in a combination of many things. We wear a lot of hats. Land surveying, we have PLSs throughout the country, LiDAR. We operate about 10 crews right now for capturing LiDAR, that being terrestrial and or handheld. Scan to BIM is really where one of our bailiwicks, if you will, because we believe that it's an integral part to the reality capture process, and it really helps to define what we believe is incredibly important in the AECOM core values. I say AECOM is architect, engineering, construction, operations, and management. And we really believe that the scan to BIM and the role of reality capture has a very important role in each one of those elements. So that's a little bit about who I am, and Great.
Thanks, Sam. Well, I mean, based on that topic right there, I think a lot of people are kind of being confronted with new technologies from 360 imagery and drones. So my question to you is, when do we go LiDAR? When do we go photogrammetry? From an AD perspective, what are the things we need to think about? What do we have to consider when we're deciding on a technology, when we're deploying something, and when we're doing this kind of thinking about when we're creating, managing, and sharing this information? What should the audience here be thinking about? What should they be considering so they don't make mistakes and choose the wrong tool for the wrong job? So from your perspective, I'd love to get some insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to take it back a little bit farther if I could. I mean,
sure.
I think that there's many benefits to both. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really to determine what your end output is. So interestingly enough, when we first approached Visual Plan about their product, it was very, the use cases were very construction centric, as they are with a lot of their competition. However, we didn't want anything to do with that. I mean, ultimately, that is a very important part of what we do. But we were looking at this from the A&E perspective, right? Design, the life cycle, the ability to integrate pre-design, schematic design, design documentation, all the way through construction documentation through closeout, operations, maintenance, things of that nature. So when you really start to look at the cradle to grave, the soup to nuts, we've got a ways of describing it. If you start to look at it, then you really have to start to think about how far are we going to take this? How much data is actually really important? Because at some point in time, we have to ask ourselves are we doing the best service for the client? Nowadays, LiDAR is so incredibly inexpensive. It's fast. We've got the handheld units. We've got units that you push around. There's still terrestrial units that can measure 2 million points in a second in less than 2 minutes. Things of that nature. So the rapid capture technology has just gotten to the point where it's not as fast as the photography with the 360 images, but it is incredibly fast. So you have to ask yourself, how far are we willing to take this? How far do we want to take this? If you're looking at a project from a like an investigation or an inspection process, then your 360 imagery is always going to be sufficient, right? It's yeoman. It really it carries a lot of weight. But when you really start to look at it and you want to take it into more of a design perspective, the photography coming from 360 imagery still plays a tremendous part during your schematic design phase with your as-builting of say utilities within a building or whatever it may be, and adding some of that pertinent detail that can allow you to advance the design documentation phase. However, in a world where so many buildings out there don't have as-builts, and those that do, the as-builts aren't correct, we always recommend the ability to utilize LiDAR as well, because LiDAR can infuse the geometric and cost certainty that would be required for a proper design and a good construction project, right? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want to move through construction, you want to try and move through as few change orders as possible. Well, one way you can do that is to know that the dimensioning that you're showing and what you're proposing versus what's existing is accurate. There's no better way to do that than LiDAR. So I think that ultimately there is a LiDAR versus photogrammetry. There is a LiDAR and photogrammetry, and both of which have to be measured well. The thing that I urge the end user and anyone who's entertaining this practice is to properly measure them both out. And what may cost a little bit more right now may save the client a tremendous amount in the long run. And that's ultimately what's most important in this process.
Excellent. Great feedback. I love it's not one or the other, it's both. And it really depends on what stage you are at with the project. And I think, one of the things that we're doing with the software too is to be able to bring in any type of data. And it's really important us to be somewhat agnostic. Yes, we are a capture technology, but mainly we're a comparative technology where we can collaborate. So appreciate your feedback. Jennifer, what are your thoughts? And I think my question too for you, you do a lot of project management, a lot of project oversight. Are you constantly, kind of touching and feeling the BIM and the LiDAR? Do you find there's access issues there? What do you think? LiDAR photogrammetry, where does it play for you in your space?
So there's definitely a few things that I want to touch on in response to that. And what I want to start with first is going back to a little bit of what Sam was talking about with respect to understanding what the intent and the use of the data is going to be. Obviously, you want to make sure that you've got the tolerances and the detail that would be required in order to execute the projects that you're dealing with. At the same time, if you aren't looking for something that's going to be down to that, millimeter as far as accuracy goes, or the tolerance goes, or something really minute, you can also consider, or you may want to also consider, how the data is going to be captured. Is it something that you need to bring somebody in, such as with Lidar, because there's a specialty requirement with that, and make sure that you're getting the data and the information correctly? Or is it something that you want to be able to utilize staff that you have on site who can be trained in order to do the data capture, like with the visual plan software and some of those considerations? So think about that not only as the tolerance, but as that end use and the way that you're planning on capturing it. All of that is going to go into those costs as you're evaluating what are the requirements for the project, not only now, but the projects in the future that you might be utilizing that data for. So once you've actually got that data, the next consideration is then thinking about how it's going to be housed, what you're going to be dealing with. When you're working in secure environments, there's a lot of concern, obviously, with having the data that's out there that somebody could utilize in ways that you don't want them to. And that goes back to security as well, just even the typical facilities information. So there are some considerations with respect to how the data is going to be housed, where it's going to be housed, what would be the possible classification associated with it, and whether it's going to be on a closed network system, or if it's going to be something that can be out on a secure yet public site that could make it a little bit more vulnerable. All of those are certainly considerations that I have to deal with some of our government clients, but it's all dependent on who you're working for and what their project is going to be. So in the secure world, obviously, you need to look at how you're going to be able to secure the data and whether or not it meets all of the requirements, and then being able to process it afterwards. If it's for a typical commercial client, there may still be considerations, but that could be something that is addressed just simply with the typical login capabilities, security capabilities for a website with MFA or something along those lines. So it does vary, and we do see that there's differences, again, just based on our clientele. But there's ways to work with them on that to make sure that everything is secure and that you're able to protect it accordingly.
Excellent. There's some great insight there, especially from a security perspective. Thanks for sharing. Scott McGowan, you do a lot of Lidar and you do a lot of really crazy stuff with a lot of expensive equipment. From your perspective, you do a lot of photogrammetry and Lidar, and we're doing some 360 now, which is pretty new for you. You want to share your insights on this question and the way you look at it?
First, I'd like to say that our business plan's a little more conservative than that, Kelly. But no, we have some neat stuff because we're in a portion of the market that's really seeing some disruptive new technology that's being miniaturized, obviously, so that we can actually fly it. But in our space, Lidar is incredibly important because we do a lot of survey work. We've gotten into a lot more digital twin rendering, obviously, different from the earlier speaker. We're in the air, we're not on the ground, so we have different parameters. His point was really well taken, which is ultimately, what is the client trying to arrive at? So we use quite a bit of photogrammetry and we use quite a bit of Lidar, but for our most of our uses, Lidar is being used as the point cloud to generate the 3D model. It's just going to be more granular and more accurate than using just photogrammetry, because at the end of the day, you've got essentially a camera sensor versus something that's in our instance, we're shooting about 500,000 pulses per second. So for us, we can establish a really dense point cloud, sometimes too dense a point cloud, depending on what the client needs. And then when we interface that with the photogrammetry on top of it, because when we fly our Lidar unit, we also have a Sony high-res camera that's bore-sided to the Lidar. So every pixel from the photographs can actually be matched up perfectly with every shot from the laser. But when you look at, like the instance that we have here, where we're doing more and more of the tank inspections, it comes down to, what is the accuracy that they need to determine the work that we're doing. And in the instance of tanks, where settlement is important, roundness is important, verticality, plumbness, you're able to collect with very, very good LiDAR and a very, very good flight plan data that is noiseless enough that it's you can actually submit it and it can be approved for the compliance needed. Whereas in some instances, you'd have to go to terrestrial when you get down to, as it was said before, the millimeter level. But when you get into like the centimeter and a half, you're talking about an inch and a half. That's where the aerial LiDAR that we use comes into play. But then that's really where the disruption happens, because then you're talking about something that traditionally is scaffolding work, rope access guys, combination with terrestrial LiDAR, and then even guys hanging from ropes taking pictures with cameras. This is all knocked out very quickly with drones using high resolution cameras and LiDAR. And now we've gotten into 360, where going into the tanks, again, you're in a confined space. It's not a place you want to spend a lot of time in. Also, when you take a tank down to clean, it's a lot of money every day when that thing's out of action. So being able to go in and use 360 and quickly capture an entire walkthrough of a tank right out of the get-go, it can be observed within hours once it's processed. It can be literally an entire inspection program can be annotated inside that can be used by the work crews. And then, of course, after the workday or at the end of a couple of work days or the end of the project, it can be used again to go back in and QC everything that was supposed to be done in there. And it's a great tool. And then as Kelly and I recently did, we had a Faro scan that was done at the same time we did the 360, so that laser point cloud can then be imported into the 360, so that the accuracy of the measuring that can be done inside during that walkthrough becomes again a great tool for the work crews. And now with the ability to actually fly the 3D cameras on the outside of the tanks and then down inside a collapsible tank, we're going to be able to model the outside as well as the inside using 360, which a lot of the major oil companies are really excited about. And one thing I would add to that is just it's also replacing a lot of people that have generally been put in kind of dangerous situations, and having the ability of high resolution 360 is it's just going to be a real game changer.